Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions on finance, employment and sustainable growth. Question number 1, Mike McKenzie.
To ask the Scottish Government what the impact will be of Dactari Diagnostics locating its manufacturing site in Inverness.
Minister Ferguson.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government recognise the strategic importance of Dactari to the Scottish medtech industry and welcomes the company's decision to open a new manufacturing operation in Inverness with the establishment of their first overseas operation, which will lead to the creation of 126 new jobs.
Mike McKenzie.
Given that this deal was sealed with the First Minister during the Scotland Week celebrations in New York and first arose from a meeting with the First Minister at the Scottish Open in Inverness last year, does the Minister agree with me that attendance and participation in such events is a very good use of the First Minister's time?
Ferguson.
Dactari is a company that will manufacture diagnostic cartridges which will be used to carry out blood tests to detect the presence of HIV in potentially millions of people in Africa where there is no access to laboratory equipment. We have the drugs for HIV, but not the ability to diagnose those who have it. Now, this company, Dactari, has therefore got a world-leading product which can provide a huge contribution to solve one of the world's most serious health issues that takes many, many lives. So I'm delighted that because of the efforts by the First Minister in his trade missions to the United States, that has helped to secure a marvellous investment for Scotland and in particular Inverness.
George Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Minister agree that following from LifeScan's £9.53 million investment last year, including a £2.85 million public investment and adding a further 19 jobs to LifeScan Scotland's workforce of 1,100, that Scotland is building a world-leading life sciences industry?
Well, yes, I do, and I'm pleased that so many of the companies are coming to the city that I represent of Inverness. I don't just think that it's something in the water, Presiding Officer. I think it's because that we're establishing a reputation worldwide as a centre of excellence for the life sciences sector. And these things don't happen by accident. They happen because of excellent concerted work by many public servants, especially in the enterprise network, and in this case particularly in Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And I would like to give recognition to Alex Patterson, Lorne Crerar and their team. They are playing a blinder for Scotland, and I'm delighted that we have attracted so many of the top companies in the world in life sciences, substantially because of their efforts.
Question number 2, Rhoda Grant.
To ask the Scottish Government how it calculates future oil revenues.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government's Oil and Gas Analytical Bulletin provides forecasts for oil and gas tax revenue from the Scottish portion of the UK continental shelf under 5 scenarios. The scenarios use a range of estimates about future operating costs, capital expenditure and profitability to reflect the impact that different assumptions about future prices and production levels are expected to have on costs and sales revenues in the oil and gas industry, and hence profitability and tax revenues.
Rhoda Grant, could you move your microphone slightly back? Thank you.
3 out of the 5 Scottish Government scenarios for oil revenues are based on a baseline price of $113 per barrel. Can the Minister tell me if any other professional or independent bodies have given similar projections for the price of oil, and can he also explain why the Scottish Government have rejected the use of the OBR forecast based on futures markets in their own calculations?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as a simple point of factual correction, we've not rejected the OBR estimates. We've actually shown the OBR estimates as scenario 1 within the bulletin that we've published. Secondly, Rhoda Grant asked me if any other organisation has predicted oil prices in excess of $117. Well, the Item Club has done so. The DEC, which is an organisation of the United Kingdom Government, has done so. I actually noticed also that the OECD published analysis that suggested that rising demand in East Asia and continued tight supply could result in oil prices rising above $150 by 2020. So I think there's plenty of other estimates which show higher estimates. What the Scottish Government has done is taken a very responsible attitude to the approaches to forecasting oil revenues.
Briefly, Rhoda Grant.
I wasn't saying who had estimated it higher. I was asking which professional bodies had estimated it in the same way as the Scottish Government had.
Cabinet Secretary.
What we've done is we've set out a realistic approach on production, which, if I look, for example, at Rhoda Grant asked about criticism about production levels. Professor Alec Kemp of the University of Aberdeen, who is probably viewed as the world expert on oil and gas production and prices, said that with respect to production, the OBR also took really quite cautious views on that. So the estimates of oil revenues will be a product of, as I said in my initial answer, production, price, profitability, investment, decommissioning, a whole variety of issues that will affect profitability, and those factors have all been included in the analysis that the Scottish Government has published, as Members of Parliament would expect us to do.
If we can have brief questions and answers, I'll take a few supplementaries. Linda Fabiani.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask for the Cabinet Secretary's view on the credibility of the OBR, in that their recent forecasts of government revenues from oil used to futures curve over 10 working days, a methodology which the Bank of England described as no better than a random walk?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think there's clearly the OBR settle their view on a number of factors. It's for the OBR to defend their methodology. As I said in my original answer to Rhoda Grant, the Scottish Government has given due regard to the OBR estimates. The OBR, of course, in 2010 predicted the economic growth in this fiscal year would be 2.9%, and in their most recent estimate, it's now projected to be 0.6%. So forecasting is a difficult job, I accept that, but I think the OBR has had some difficulties in forecasting accurately a number of factors, and what the Government has put into the debate on oil and gas revenues is a responsible and considered analysis of the position.
Gavin Brown.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. In the interest of transparency, will the Scottish Government publish the workings and the data underpinning their projections in the rather brief analytical bulletin?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, there's a volume of material which has been published in relation to the assumptions that are made. The bulletin goes through the different scenarios that are relevant to the calculations that the Government has made. I'd also point out to Mr Brown that I've certainly answered a number of parliamentary questions which have examined some of this detail, a lot of which I would have to say is contained already in the Oil and Gas Bulletin. And I think Parliament has a significant amount of material that develops this material. I'd simply point out to Mr Brown that Professor John McLaren, who is a frequent commentator on this subject, said that the Scottish Government's Oil and Gas Analytical Bulletin is a very welcome addition to the statistical landscape, especially with the referendum approaching. So I think that's quite a healthy endorsement from a significant commentator in the debate on these issues.
Briefly, Patrick Harvey.
Thank you. Here's something else Professor Kemp probably won't agree with. The Cabinet Secretary may not have seen the recent report from Carbon Tracker and the Grantham Institute on unburnable carbon, demonstrating very clearly that if the world is remotely serious about climate change, we cannot afford to burn most of the known reserves of fossil fuels. Doesn't that imply not only that the estimated revenues are hugely inflated, but the entire oil and gas industry is hugely overvalued?
Cabinet Secretary.
I fundamentally disagree with the last point that Patrick Harvey has made. I think the oil and gas industry makes a very significant contribution to the economic health, the employment, the investment regime in Scotland. In relation to his wider point about the issue of carbon emissions and the accounting for carbon, the Government has a statutory framework in place, put in place by the last Parliament, which obliges us to deliver a certain performance in relation to carbon reduction. We must develop and utilise the natural resources of Scotland consistent with that framework, and that is exactly the approach that the Scottish Government will take.
Thank you. Question number 3 has not been lodged and an explanation has been provided. Question number 4, Joan McAlpine.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what's being done to boost employment opportunities in Dumfries and Galloway.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government is committed to supporting sustainable economic growth and promoting job creation throughout Scotland, including in Dumfries and Galloway, and our economic strategy provides us with the overarching economic framework to do that. We work closely with a range of organisations, including Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Development International, Skills Development Scotland, Visit Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway Council, the Third Sector, financial institutions and other specialist advisory bodies to promote job creation. Since 2009, 5 businesses in Dumfries and Galloway have accepted regional selective assistance offers. The projects were aimed at stimulating capital investment of almost £8 million in order to create and safeguard 112 jobs.
Joan McAlpine.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that Reed and Taylor, Langham's last tweed firm, has gone into administration with 35 jobs being lost. This comes after a spate of job losses in Langham this year, which will have a devastating effect on a rural community. Can I ask what assistance the Scottish Government can offer this community and the people who live there? Cabinet Secretary.
In relation to the closure of Reed and Taylor, the Scottish Enterprise has been working closely with the company over the last couple of years on a number of projects to try to strengthen the foundations of the company. It was with great regret that the decision was taken to call in the administrators on Friday. Since the administrators have been appointed, Scottish Enterprise have been in contact with the company, with the administrators, with a view to encouraging further developments of the business, and a prospectus to market the business has been prepared, and a closing date of the end of this week for offers, indicative offers to be brought forward. The PACE organisation will provide very direct support to the workforce that are being affected, and I certainly commit to Joan McAlpine that the Government will, and through Scottish Enterprise, will work closely with the administrators to try to encourage a new business venture to emerge. I would be happy to arrange for a meeting to take place with the member to discuss any wider issues in relation to the Langham economy, and would be happy to assist in establishing that discussion.
Thank you. A brief supplementary, brief answer, please, Elaine Murray.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As well as the jobs which Ms McAlpine mentioned, we've also in the last few weeks seen over 40 jobs lost to Interflow and Dumfries, and statistics released by UK ministers to my colleague Russell Brown suggest that over 2,000 private sector jobs have been lost in Dumfries and Galloway since 2010. So does the Cabinet Secretary agree that time has come for the relevant agencies to develop a more proactive approach to job retention and creation in Dumfries and Galloway?
Cabinet Secretary.
Certainly the focus of Scottish Enterprise as the principal economic development agency in this respect is to work with companies within the locality to strengthen those companies, to boost employment where that can be secured, and of course that will be reinforced as a consequence of the discussions that we take forward in this respect. The Business Gateway, of course, provides that support in the locality. There are a range of different projects within Dumfries and Galloway that are attracting support from Scottish Enterprise, a number of them in connection with the renewable energy sector, within the rural economy, within the food and drink sector, and of course at all times Scottish Enterprise act to support the development of new business opportunities in the area. Personally, I attend a couple of times a year the South of Scotland Alliance, which is a body of local authority and enterprise agency and tourism officials, which gathers together to provide focus to the implementation of the economic development measures in the whole of the South of Scotland, covering Dumfries and Galloway and the Scottish borders. And of these issues that are raised by Dr Murray are kept under constant attention by the discussions that take place in the South of Scotland Alliance and amongst the different partners that take forward the Government's economic strategy.
Thank you. Question number 5, Bruce Crawford.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what financial support it has provided to the Stirling area
over the last 4 years to promote and deliver events connected with the Year of Homecoming and the 700th anniversary of the Battle of Bannockburn, and how much it will provide in 2013-14?
Minister Fergus Ewing.
The Scottish Government invested £181,500 in events in the Stirling area connected with our first Year of Homecoming in 2009. The level of confirmed financial support for 2013-14 for such events presently stands at £310,000, and this may increase yet further. My officials, Invent Scotland and Creative Scotland, are in discussion with event organisers who are all working hard to ensure that Stirling and the rest of Scotland have a fantastic events offering in 2014. In addition to the level of financial support for events, Historic Scotland is also investing £5 million to complete the site upgrade and new visitor facilities at Bannockburn, which, Presiding Officer, will be truly superb.
Bruce Crawford.
I thank the Minister for his response. It is clear that significant investment has been made in the Stirling area to ensure a very exciting, vibrant Year of Homecoming and 700th anniversary of the Battle of Bannockburn. However, to ensure that the economic benefits are maximised to the full, can the Minister assure me that every consideration will be given by Events Scotland to supporting Stirling Council's wider and more beefed-up programme for homecoming, for example, Hogmanay 2014, the Spirit of Stirling Whisky Festival, Stirling Highland Games, Stirling Food and Drink Festival, and the Bloody Scotland Crime Writing Festival. This is Stirling's year, and it's a fantastic opportunity that must be grasped to the full.
Fergus Ewing.
I think the member kept us guessing there as to what was to follow, the epithet bloody. But could I say that all of these events offer a terrific opportunity for people to enjoy a day out in Stirling. I've met with the leadership of Stirling Council, I think on 4 or 5 occasions over the past year, and I'm due to meet them again on the 15th of May. We want to work with them to make the Year of Homecoming truly remarkable and memorable, a marvellous occasion for us all to enjoy and to celebrate the outcome of the Battle of Bannockburn.
Question number 6, Liam MacArthur.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with Orkney Islands Council and other stakeholders about the implications of ORTAC going into administration.
Fergus Ewing.
Presiding Officer, we were saddened to hear of the difficulties faced by ORTAC and the impact its decision to go into voluntary administration has had on its staff, and our thoughts are with them and their families at this difficult time. Our initial discussions with the Administrator, BDO, have been to ensure that all available support is provided to the 29 staff who have been made redundant through a Partnership Action for Continuing Employment PACE initiative. Discussions now continue with Orkney Islands Council, Highlands and Islands Enterprise and BDO. We remain hopeful that BDO is able to find a buyer for ORTAC and believe that the company has a viable future securing employment in Orkney and elsewhere.
Liam MacArthur.
Can I thank the Minister for that very positive response? You'll appreciate the importance and indeed the iconic status of ORTAC in Orkney's internationally renowned jewellery sector, but there's been understandable a knock-on effect on the confidence of ORTAC's move into voluntary administration. Could you perhaps set out what steps, and indeed the success of those steps, in taking forward support for those who have lost their jobs, including many in my own constituency? And will he agree that it's critically important that whoever ends up taking on this business, and I understand there have been a number of notes of interest, that it's critically important that manufacturing remains in Orkney over the long term?
Yes, well, I'm entirely in agreement with Liam MacArthur, and will, as always, work closely with him on all of these matters so far as we can to give every assistance to the 29 individuals and their families who are affected. And, of course, the primary objective is to see that there is a successful outcome of the administration. He refers to the reputation that Orkney enjoys for jewellery and jewellery businesses, and of course there are many other jewellery firms of renown, including Sheila Fleet, and many smaller firms in Orkney that have made their mark and are regarded for high quality, providing attractive jewellery throughout the world. So I don't think that reputation really is in doubt whatsoever, but we will make every effort to assist those individuals and families in every way possible to find other opportunities. And of course, there are many other opportunities, I believe, in Orkney, which is succeeding to a huge extent in other areas such as tourism and renewable energy, to name but two. But of course it is up to the individuals involved as to what they wish to do, and I will be happy to engage further with the member to follow this through over the next weeks and months.
Thank you. Question number 7, Richard Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what progress it is making in taking forward the business rates incentivisation scheme.
Minister Derek Mackay.
The Scottish Government is actively working jointly with COSLA and local government to review the business rates incentivisation scheme targets for 12-13, taking into account the latest business rates returns, which show that the loss from revaluation appeals is likely to be lower than previously predicted. If we have not reviewed the targets, local authorities would have stood to benefit from an unjustified windfall, and not as a result of any action they themselves had taken to increase their collection rates or grow the tax base. The impact of BRIS will not be known until the final 12-13 audited non-domestic rates income returns are received from local authorities in February 2014.
Richard Baker.
Thank you. The scheme, as originally outlined by ministers, would have enabled Aberdeen City Council to invest some £5.8 million in the local economy. The decision to revise the target in light of the appeals means Council will now only receive some £300,000 through the scheme. Is it not the case that Aberdeen is being penalised for delays in business rates collection elsewhere in Scotland? And what will the Minister do to rectify this so the scheme achieves what it was meant to achieve, namely the ability to invest in economic growth in Aberdeen, which is so important for our wider Scottish economy?
Minister.
Well, I think the member should understand the full extent and the full workings of the scheme. Aberdeen City Council has raised matters in relation to the overall take and any change in circumstances. But you see, if there was a significant event that led to a review of the targets, that was part of the original intent of the scheme. And bear in mind, the purpose of it was to grow the tax base at a local level, have local authorities thinking about that, or improve collection rates. So these are matters that are part of the current consideration. And because of that appeals issue I referred to, that issue cuts both ways as well, that the distributable income is guaranteed by the Scottish Government to local government. So those other factors that I've referred to will feature in discussions that we will have collectively with local government through COSLA.
Thank you. Question number 8, Linda Fabiani.
To ask the Scottish Government when it last met South Lanarkshire Council and what was discussed.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
The Scottish Government meets regularly with Scottish councils and discusses a range of issues with them.
Linda Fabiani.
Thank you to the Minister for that answer. Can I ask that, given the further potential job losses in East Kilbride announced this week, does the Minister agree that it is even more important that South Lanarkshire Council, through the East Kilbride Task Force, comes up with a vision and strategy for the future of East Kilbride? And will he reconfirm the Government's commitment to Scotland's largest town?
Minister.
Well, of course, we're happy to confirm that everything possible will be done to assist generation of jobs in East Kilbride. And, of course, Linda Fabiani is making advocacy for that cause in Parliament on a regular basis. We understand that the Scottish Government is represented on the East Kilbride Task Force by officials from Scottish Enterprise and Skills Development Scotland, and they are contributing to the development of an action plan which is aimed at encouraging future business opportunities. The South Lanarkshire Council East Kilbride Task Force is due to meet tomorrow to discuss the draft action plan and the local area economic review. We will continue to work very closely with them and the member, Linda Fabiani, to do everything within our power to create new jobs in East Kilbride.
A very brief question and answer supplementary from Margaret McCulloch.
Thank you. What assurances can the Minister actually provide that the Scottish Government will find sufficient resources to support the action plan of the East Kilbride Task Force, thereby helping to secure and promote the pre-eminent position of the town within the West Scotland economy? Minister.
Well, I can provide to the member the assurance that we will do everything we possibly can to assist them in every way practical. I mean, of course, we have to work through any proposal to see how viable it is, how affordable it is, how practical it is, how it can be financed, whether it will sustain jobs, and we do so on the basis of our economic strategy, which is to encourage growth and to focus our efforts on growth sectors, growth markets and growth companies. I think that's the correct strategy, and we will make decisions based on applying that strategy. But on a personal level, I met with the leader of South Lanarkshire Council not so long ago about different matters. We are very keen to build up relations with all council leaders, and we do that regularly, Mr Mackay principally, but other ministers, including myself. And the objective is to do everything we possibly can to help workers who face redundancy and to deal with the very difficult economic conditions in Scotland and the UK at this time.
Question 9, Aileen MacLeod.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government on what basis the share of UK debt to be assigned to an independent Scotland should be calculated.
Cabinet Secretary, John Swinney.
President Officer, the division of the UK's historic debt would be agreed as part of wider negotiations into the division of the total stock of assets and liabilities. Assigning the debt using either a population or historic share would leave Scotland with a lower ratio of debt to GDP than the UK.
Aileen MacLeod.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response? Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that, as is now clear, Scotland has contributed significantly in excess of its per capita share of tax revenues to the UK Exchequer over many decades, for which it has received no return, that this should be reflected in these calculations?
John Swinney.
Well, the member is correct in the substance of her analysis. The Scotland's balance sheet report published earlier this month shows that tax receipts per person in Scotland have been higher than in the UK as a whole in every year since 1980-81. The report also demonstrates that if Scotland's share of UK debt was calculated on the basis of its historical net fiscal balances, it would result in Scotland being assigned a share of UK net debt equivalent to 38% of Scottish GDP in 2011. This is significantly lower than the UK's debt burden, which stands at 72% of GDP.
Question 10, Claire Baker.
To ask the Scottish Government what its position on open cast restoration.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
We share the concerns of local communities around the responsible restoration of open cast coal sites, and we are setting up the Scottish Mines Restoration Trust, the SMRT, to help facilitate the restoration of old open cast coal mines across Scotland. Whilst our main concern is to ensure responsible restoration of open cast sites, the restoration process itself is expected over time potentially to create hundreds of jobs across the country. The new Scottish Mines Restoration Trust will engage with local councils, landowners and coal operators, undertaking a facilitation role to pool all relevant parties together to ensure the best possible outcome for local communities and the effective restoration of old open cast mines.
Claire Baker.
The Minister refers to the establishment of the Scottish Mines Restoration Trust. Yesterday in Parliament he described this as a facilitating rather than a funding body. Can he say a bit more about what discussion he is having with local authorities to ensure that bonds are in place for all current sites? And what assurances can he give to communities that if there is a problem and the bonds aren't in place or the bond is at risk, that the Scottish Government will take action to ensure restoration, including looking at the sale of assets or a condition that is in place for any future buyers?
Well, a short-life working group on restoration bonds was actually initiated last September 2012. I make that point to emphasise to members that this work didn't just begin in the last couple of weeks following the announcement of the liquidation of SRG. It's been ongoing for a long time. This is a very complex topic. As I made clear yesterday, prime responsibility rests with industry. The SMRT's body will be to facilitate the complex and difficult task of enabling restoration to actually take place. There are, of course, many practical difficulties, but I'm confident that working together we can secure a good outcome, and indeed the task force, the Scotland Open Cast Mining Task Force, the formation of which I announced yesterday, will meet on Monday morning, I believe, and take these matters forward with members of each of the three main opposition parties represented. These are not easy matters, Presiding Officer, but we are determined to find the appropriate solutions going forward and working together. And I'm very confident that we will be able to make some good progress on a number of these sites.
Question number 11, Willie Coffey.
Ask the Scottish Government what support it provides for community business initiatives in Kilmarnock and Irvine Valley.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
Community businesses may access support from Scottish Government third sector organisational development programmes, for example, Just Enterprise. Individuals who wish to set up social enterprises are also eligible for support from Just Enterprise and from the Social Entrepreneurs Fund. Cooperative Development Scotland provides specialist advice to new and growing cooperative enterprises including existing businesses who wish to change ownership to adopt a cooperative model.
Willie Coffey.
Can I thank the Minister for that answer, and of course the support indicated is very welcome indeed in my constituency. Could the Minister say perhaps how other business start-ups might attract additional support, financial or otherwise, beyond our very helpful business rates relief scheme, particularly in their crucial first year of operation?
Fergus Ewing.
Well, there are many ways that small businesses and start-up businesses can obtain support. The primary source of advice is, of course, from the Business Gateway. It is administered through local authorities. And I believe, from memory, Presiding Officer, always a challenge, that the figure last year was around about 11,000 businesses were contacted and received advice. Of course, advice can also be obtained from the legal profession and accountancy, from mentors, from business and organisations such as the FSB, the SCDI, the Institute of Directors, and from chambers of commerce and other sources. There is a willingness in Team Scotland to provide every help to start-up businesses, and that's why we praise the efforts such as the Entrepreneurial Spark, which has had financial assistance, and the Youth Business Trust, and the efforts of individuals in business of seniority and experience who offer their time to young people, their time almost always without any question of any charge being made, but because they want young people to have the best business start in life. And I think we are beginning to see the fruits of their labours coming through.
Question number 12, Jenny Mara.
To ask the Scottish Government how many Scottish civil service jobs have been transferred to or created in Dundee since May 2007.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, there are currently 102 Scottish Government staff deployed in Dundee, 53 in the Office of the Scottish Charity Regulator, 33 by Education Scotland and 16 employed by the Directorate for Housing, Regeneration and Welfare.
Jenny Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My question to the Cabinet Secretary was actually how many of these jobs have been created or transferred to Dundee since 2007. If he could possibly answer that for me, because I know that his fellow Minister, Shona Robertson, made great play before 2007 of calling on Scottish civil service jobs to come to Dundee, and there's been 6 years to achieve this now. So I'd like clarification from the Cabinet Secretary on how many of these have been created since his government came to power.
Cabinet Secretary.
I simply say to Jenny Mara that the Government has to operate within a very significant set of financial pressures which determine the approaches that we can take to the deployment of public sector resources. In the light of those decisions, the Government has taken, I think it's undeniable, under clear consensus within Parliament to tackle the cost of administration within the Government, and any relocation of jobs from one part of the country to another costs more money in the short term than it saves. And if money is under pressure, and if Parliament wants the Government to control the administration budget, which we have done and reduced it significantly, then the opportunity to undertake all the measures that we would like to undertake to relocate jobs is much more challenging in that context. What I would say to Jenny Mara, of course, is that the City of Dundee has benefited very significantly from other types of investment by the Government. Particularly as I drove through the City of Dundee last night, I saw further developments of the significant waterfront development, which is anchored by Government funding. There will, of course, be the development of the V&A Museum in the City of Dundee. There is the significant investments in the University of Dundee and the University of Abertay. And I think, looking at all these things in the round, I think it demonstrates very significant investment by the Government in the City of Dundee.
If questions are a bit shorter and answers the same, we might get a couple more in. 13, Dennis Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what it's doing to increase or even encourage recruitment into the energy sector.
Fergus Ewing.
Following the publication of the Skills Investment Plan for the energy sector in March 2011, there has been an extensive career promotion activity to attract a new force to the energy sector in Scotland. This includes 10,000 working in the energy sector leaflets produced by Education Scotland being distributed across Scottish schools, and over 5,000 hits on the energy section of My World of Work. there has been a 13% increase in the number of engineering and energy-related modern apprenticeship starts over the past 2 years, with fabrication and welding starts increasing by 25% in the same period. We have also supported 890 training opportunities through the Energy Skills Challenge Fund in 2012-13 in areas such as oil and gas, marine renewables, wind, grid and commercial diving to help the sector recruit experienced people.
Dennis Robertson.
I thank the Minister for that very detailed and comprehensive answer. The Minister is very much aware that there remains a historic imbalance of gender mix within the energy sector. What more can the Government do to try and get more women into the energy sector? You know, in my own constituency of Aberdeenshire West and the rest of Scotland.
Minister.
I think, Presiding Officer, Mr Robertson has actually identified one of the potential areas where most can be done to help the oil and gas sector achieve the tremendous delivery of the tremendous projects which have been announced of late. There are now in the pipeline £100 billion worth of oil and gas projects in Scotland. The scale is immense. Over the next couple of years, we will see more investment than ever before in the history of oil extraction in Scotland and the UK. And if we can persuade more females to take part in the profession by entering the oil and gas sector, then that would be perhaps the most obvious way of rising to the challenge. I think the interesting counterintuitive point, Presiding Officer, is that most of the jobs in the oil and gas sector are not offshore. And I'm not suggesting that females can't work offshore. Of course they can. But I think there is a false perception of the industry that oil and gas means working offshore. Now it increasingly may mean working onshore as project management, designing projects such as the Gorgon field in Australia, which has been designed from Aberdeen because they're the best at it in the world. And therefore, I do feel that Dennis Robertson has highlighted one of the key opportunities for the industry. It's up to the industry, however, to deal with this, and we will provide every possible assistance that we can for them to rise to ensure that more females are encouraged to enter the industry and take part in contributing to its huge worldwide success.
Question number 14, Gordon MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what the tax revenue in Scotland was estimated to be in the year 2011-12.
Cabinet Secretary.
Including a geographical share of North Sea oil, Scottish tax revenue in 2011-12 was estimated to be £56.9 billion.
Gordon MacDonald.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? The Scotland's balance sheet report highlights that Scottish tax receipts are higher per capita than the rest of the UK. Can the Cabinet Secretary inform us to the extent of the difference and for how long tax receipts have been higher in Scotland on a per capita basis?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, on Mr MacDonald's last point, per capita tax receipts in Scotland have been higher in Scotland than in the UK in each of the last 32 years, which is a point I made in the earlier response. And in 2011-12, the difference in per capita tax receipts between Scotland and the rest of the UK was £1,700 per person, £10,700 as against £9,000 in the UK as a whole.
Thank you. Question number 15 has not been lodged. An explanation has been provided. Question number 16 has been withdrawn and an explanation has been provided. And question number 17 has been withdrawn and an explanation has been provided. That therefore brings us to question number 18, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what progress has been made on increasing employment opportunities in the west of Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government is committed to supporting sustainable economic growth and promoting job creation throughout Scotland, including in the west of Scotland. We are investing in infrastructure and working with a range of organisations to maintain a competitive business environment. Since 2007, business across the west of Scotland have accepted regional selective assistance offers of £46 million, expected to create and safeguard over 5,000 jobs.
Stuart McMillan.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response. And last week's announcement of Scotland's unemployment figures decreasing below 200,000 for the first time since 2009 is a welcome sign that the Scottish Government's policies are playing their part in helping deal with tough economic conditions. But can the Cabinet Secretary inform me of any discussions that have taken place between the Scottish Government and local authorities in the West of Scotland region, which have focused upon the issue of reducing even further the unemployment rates Can you outline any action points that were agreed, and also what progress has been made with these action points?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, we regularly meet with local authorities to discuss a range of topics, not least of which is the whole issue of the condition of the economy and the objective of reducing unemployment rates and improving economic conditions. One of the specific areas of consideration has been around the 25 million Youth Employment Scotland initiative, which will make up to 10,000 job opportunities available to young people in the coming year. The initiative will be administered by local authorities, and the Scottish Government has held talks with local authorities across Scotland in recent months regarding its development. I am delighted that all West of Scotland authorities have submitted bids, and an announcement will be made shortly regarding this.
Briefly, Ken Macintosh.
Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what initiatives he has put in place to tackle the issue of long-term unemployment in Scotland, and why they have so far been spectacularly unsuccessful?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think that possibly just sums up Mr Macintosh's rather kind of miserable approach to the issues that we're trying to tackle. Of course, there are employment challenges. We've seen last week a significant fall in unemployment in Scotland and a significant rise in employment, the largest rise in employment in Scotland in 12 years. And I would have thought that Mr Macintosh could have perhaps put in a modest preamble to his question on that point. The Government has a range of different initiatives in place to support people who have been unemployed for sustained periods of time. As he will well know, the UK Government's work programme is focused also on tackling the individuals that are involved in long-term unemployment. And what the Scottish Government tries to do, working with the UK Government through the Scottish Employability Forum, is to ensure that the initiatives we take complement the work that is undertaken by the body that is principally leading in this area of activity. And of course, in terms of long-term unemployment, that is an approach which the UK Government's work programme is designed primarily to tackle. We will continue that approach and to provide focused support and assistance to individuals to help them back into employment.
Thank you. That concludes questions. And the next item of business this